that I said? Nah, Dole. What have I told you about pressing buttons that you don't understand? That's right. You never did listen to that bit.
That's a lot warmer, isn't it? Hello girl, how are you? Yes, hello and welcome to my top 10 12th Doctor stories. We are drawing ever so closer to saying goodbye to the Attack Eyebrow Doctor. And I, like many people, am so not ready to say goodbye to him because Peter Capaldi, you are magnificent. You are basically the modern day John Pertwee with your lovely hair and your velvet. It's just brilliant, and I'm just not looking forward to saying goodbye to you because you're just brilliant. So what better way to look back at Peter Capaldi's time as the Doctor than do my top 10 stories. So yes, this is a top 10. There are going to be some quite odd choices on this list, and there are going to be some quite obvious choices as well. So please do respect my opinion, because yeah, there are going to be some very odd choices on this list. So without further ado, let's begin this top 10. Right then, kicking off this list with the Igon Invasion and Igon Inversion, a Series 9 episode, and yes, I'll be counting two-parters as one story because they're essentially one story, and there will be spoilers throughout this video if you haven't seen all of Peter Capaldi's era. So going back to this story, the Igon Invasion, I just love it. At the time when this aired, it was my second favourite Peter Capaldi story. As you can see, it has gone up quite a bit. It's now at the 10th place. I think the reason why I love the Igon Invasion in particular is because it does have that sort of third Doctor feel to it. Whereas it's got Unit in it, I don't know, but I just love the sheer scale of this episode because it is a whole worldwide threat. It's not just in England, which I like because we see, I think it's Mexico, the story's in as well, so I think that's great that we see all these different parts of the world being affected by this whole Igon thing. And I think that it's great that we actually finally picked on the Igon subplot from Day of the Doctor, which I know a lot of people thought was shoehorned in with the story, but I don't mind. I think it's quite nice to see the result and the actions and the consequences of Day of the Doctor, so I do like that, and I think the Zygons are very cunning and manipulative within this story, and this story really does play, you know, you can trust nobody, and I think that this story really uses the Zygons to their advantage, especially in the scene where the unit soldier confronts his mom. You know, could you kill a duplicate of your mom even though you know it's a Zygon? I think that's a very interesting moral question there within the story. And I think the cliffhanger for this story is just brilliant. It's one of the best from Series 9. I absolutely love it. Inversion, however, I feel is a bit of a step down from Invasion. I think Invasion's a great story, but Inversion does drop a bit because I think the thing what this two-parter does, it does make the Zygons become very generic monsters with the whole growling thing, which I don't really like. But I think that Inversion, it kind of loses the scale. What Invasion built up with, it does become more centred in England now. We finally see the Doctor and Osgood kind of become like a TARDIS team, like dare I say. I think that was quite nice to see. And I think that this is probably Jenna Coleman's best performance in Doctor Who, playing Bonnie and Clara. I think that was really done. It's a very clever episode itself. And I think the highlight for this story is the war speech. I think that's one of Capaldi's defining moments and definitive moments as a Doctor. Definitely not my favourite 12th Doctor moment, but definitely a strong moment, especially the time when this aired. It was quite a poignant speech. So at number 9, we have The Empress of Mars by Mark Gatiss. Now, this was one of my most anticipated episodes from Series 10 because if you didn't know, I'm a massive Ice Warrior fan, and to have a classic monster face the 12th Doctor, it's always going to be great because the 12th Doctor is a very classic Doctor, and within this story I feel like Peter Capaldi really did channel his, the inner 4th Doctor, because we got, the bit when he confronts the Ice Warrior, I think Friday, and he's like, oh, I've got a bad feeling about this. And it just comes across very Tom Baker-ish, which I like. And this story, I'm so glad Mark Gatiss told this story. I think that it was only right that he continued from where he left off with Cold War instead of doing the Sleep No More sequel. So I'm glad that he told this story instead. And I just love this story because it's such a quirky story itself, with having Victorians on Mars, and there's just something quite interesting about it. The story also introduces a new form of Ice Warrior in the form of the Empress, which I do like because we've got the Ice Lord, now we've got the Empress, so I think that's quite nice. And it was just nice to see more than one Ice Warrior on screen and have sort of an army, and I think the way that they did how they kill people was quite nice, with a sort of new variation on how they kill people was great. I thought that they had some great moments when they burst out of the ground. I thought that was wonderful. It would have been nice to see them burst out of the ice tombs, but I just love Empress of Mars. And now I've got to talk about the elephant in the room with Empress of Mars, and that is the cameo. And I think that every classic fan squealed with delight when they saw Alpha Centauri popped up on the screen. When this first aired and you heard the voice, I was like, is it Alpha? And then Alpha appeared on the screen. I was just like, oh, Alpha Centauri, it's good to see you. Like that. If you told me this time last year that Alpha Centauri would return to Doctor Who, I would have laughed going, no, Alpha Centauri won't return. But it was such a nice little fitting way, and it just slots in nicely to previous Ice Warrior stories. It's a nice little nod to those stories. And yeah, I just absolutely love the Empress of Mars. It's just a fitting Ice Warrior story, and just a rather fun, quirky story, I think. Number 8, we have Deep Breath, the first 12th Doctor story, obviously written by Stephen Moffat. Yeah, what a great introduction story for the 12th Doctor. It's very interesting when you watch Time of the Doctor and then you watch this, because Time of the Doctor is very light, fluffy, fun adventure, but also quite sad, whereas this story, you know, is quite dark and grim. So you can see a clear divide between the Matt Smith years and the Peter Capaldi years. So yeah, like I said, it is a fantastic introduction story. It is visually stunning. I think the direction for this story is brilliant. I just love the whole sort of idea of the 12th Doctor coming to terms with it, with his Doctor. I think that's great. The restaurant scene's a real treat to watch. You know, and when the Doctor's sort of chatting to the half-faced man, and I just love the whole mystery. You know, did the Doctor push the half-faced man, which I think he did push the half-faced man, or did he just jump? I think that's a great little idea, and then you see, you know, the Doctor's eyebrows flick up, you know, look up. I think that was just a wonderful moment. I just think it is a great story, and I love the little surprise of Matt Smith appearing, and I think that was quite nice, because I know a lot of people were against Peter Capaldi, and I think it was quite nice to have Matt Smith going, look, he's still the Doctor, so just trust him, you know. And I think that was quite a nice little idea. The half-faced man, I absolutely loved, brilliantly performed, and when I saw him at the Doctor Who experience, it was kind of a surreal thing, because he just has that creepy feel to it. It does feel very Philip Hinchcliffe-esque, like he did come out of season 13. Just absolutely wonderful, and yeah, it's sort of a sign of a great era coming along, and just the dynamic between Clara and the 12th Doctor within this is very funny, and just leads to some great scenes between those two. So yeah. Number 7, we have Time Heist by Steve Thompson. Now, yeah, this might be a bit of an odd choice. Time Heist isn't a well-regarded episode, but I personally love it. I think that I do enjoy Steve Thompson's writing. You know, I did enjoy Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS, and I did enjoy Curse of the Black Spot to an extent. But I feel like this story is made for the 12th Doctor, putting this rather cold Doctor who just wants to focus on the job in hand and doesn't care about people dying around him. He just wants to do his job. I think that's great. I think that the story is visually stunning. It does have some nice funny moments with, you know, the Doctor trying to get Clara to go on the adventure, and you know when Sai says, who put you in charge, and the Doctor's like, oh, I think it's the eyebrows. I think it does have some nice funny moments within it. I think the teller, the monster of the story, is a wonderful idea, with it detecting guilt, and if it detects guilt, your brain basically becomes soup. So yeah, I love that idea, but I think my main criticism with the story is the ending. It does have a Hyde ending, in the sense that it all becomes lovey-dovey in the end, which I don't really like. But other than that, I think the supporting characters are great. You know, Sabre and Sai, I think they're great, very unique, and it would have been very interesting if they did become companions. And I think that the story incorporates time rather cleverly with the whole architect thing. I think that was great. So yeah, Time Heist, I love. Brilliant story, underrated gem from Peter Capaldi's era. At number 6 we have Listen. Granted, this episode has become rather redundant with the whole Danny Pink thing, But to me, when I was watching this was the first episode where I fell in love with the 12th Doctor. This was the first proper episode where I was just like, this is the 12th Doctor, I love him. Because up until that point, it was kind of rocky for me when Series 8 was airing, and this was the first episode where I was like, yes, this is the 12th Doctor, this is where I'm enjoying Series 8. And Peter Capaldi, has said in interviews, this was the first story when he first properly felt like the Doctor, when the writing and he could match his performance with that. I feel like everything gelled well with this story, especially for the 12th Doctor. And you can just tell that Peter Capaldi is just enjoying himself because he's revelling in every moment of this story, with him searching for knowledge, to his question with us, getting a great monologue at the start, which really does set up the atmosphere for the scenes the 12th Doctor features in. And I love it when Doctor Who puts their own spin on certain things, and this story puts its own spin on, why do we talk when no one's there, and the whole sort of monster under the bed. And yeah, I just like that whole idea of it, and I think the ending, I rather like the ending. I think it's quite a nice little ending, really. So at number 6 we have Listen. At number 5 we have the Monk Trilogy, containing Extremis, Pyramid at the End of the World and Lie of the Land. So Extremis is your typical Moffat story, but this is a diverse Doctor Who story in the sense of Series 10, with Series 10 going back to basics with very simple stories from point A to point B, up until Extremis. Extremis pushes you back to the complex storytelling, and it feels like Doctor Who, and I'm so glad that they continued the Doctor's blind story arc. It feels like what you'd see in the Doctor Who books back in the late 90s, early 2000s, which I like. And I like the idea that the world is, this is a whole simulation. I think that was such a great twist. I love the scenes within the Vatican. I think that's such an eerie and creepy bit, and the monks just work extremely well in that environment. And I just love the idea of the Veritas, a very simple and effective idea. Pyramid at the End of the World, quite a dialogue heavy story, and it does feel very classic. It does feel, very 1970s sort of type of story with the whole Ensign. It's a very traditional sci-fi story. Alongside that, Capaldi's channeling the third Doctor with building the, gadgets. The monks are great within this. I love the idea that they need consent to take over, making it feel like not a typical Earth invasion, and the final 10 minutes are just absolutely solid. I love the cliffhanger for this. It's just a wonderful closing 10 minutes to the story. Lie of the Land, certainly the weakest story of the trilogy, and I will say that this story is pretty enjoyable. I like seeing the Doctor being evil. I think they should have played on that aspect in the plot a bit more, and I do like the sort of bleak, no hope feel to the episode, and I think this is a wonderful story for Bill, one of Bill's strongest outings. But I will say I don't think the monks are fully utilised within the story. At number 4 we have Under the Lake and Before the Flood. Yes, an absolute gem of a story from Series 9. This is a classic story told within a new series format, mixing strong elements from the classic Who with the base Under Siege, with giving us this very claustrophobic feel to it. But not only that, we do get a bit of the Hinchcliffe era thrown in with the ghost idea. And right from the off, this story is going to be about with someone being burnt and someone being drowned. This story really doesn't shy away from death, and the use of sign language within this story is brilliant, making Cass probably the best supporting character within this story, and I feel like that element is really utilised within Before the Flood. Now, the 12th Doctor, he is well written within this story, with him using cards to comfort people, proving that he's very alien and distant. And I just love the sheer delight when he realises he's dealing with ghosts. The Fisher King, I think, is a great design, but I feel like, again, he's not utilised within the actual story. Just a well-told story about time, and I just love the rock Doctor Who theme tune. Number 3 we have Wild Enough and Time and The Doctor Falls. What a finale! This is one of the best finales in recent years. This is everything what a finale should be. Bold, epic and emotional. Right from the off you are intrigued, why is the Doctor regenerating? I just love the whole idea of the spaceship with the levels of the ship being at different times due to the black hole. The story is dark and creepy, especially in the hospital scene, and the reveal for John Sims Master was just utterly brilliant. This is probably my favourite new series Master story out there. We see the return of the classic Cybermen, or the return of the Mondasian Cybermen. This story has some great twists, a wonderful cliffhanger, and just a great setup for the finale. The Doctor falls, Capaldi just owned this episode with a speech about kindness, and my favourite moment from the episode probably being when the Doctor's blowing up the Cybermen, when we get little references to previous Cybermen stories. The Master and Missy ending was just fab, and the ending was just another jaw-dropping moment. Honestly, I've barely scratched the surface why I love the finale. This is just a wonderful story for Bill as well. It's just a wonderful finale. It's just magnificent, utter perfection. At number 2, we have Heaven Sent. Yes, this has probably shocked quite a few of you, because this is normally the number 1 spot on everyone's, top Capaldi episodes. But yes, this is, heaven did bless us with this episode. It is 55 minutes of Capaldi goodness, and it just had to be on the list. Heaven Sent is one of those stories, the more you watch, the more you pick up, the tiny details that link to the plot. It just gets better and better on rewatch. This story can only be done with Capaldi, and Capaldi just grabs the story by the horns and just runs with it. The sheer gravitas and weight of his performance is just utterly brilliant. And we finally close the Finding Gallifrey arc. It's just a shame what happened after Heaven Sent, but it is just a very strong cliffhanger. The Veil is just a fantastic concept behind it. The music does remind me of, the 1980s Doctor Who music, and personally, I think this story is one hell of a bird. At number 1, my favourite 12th Doctor story is Mommy on the Orient Express. Yes, where do I start with this story other than it is utter perfection? This is how you should write the 12th Doctor, especially at the end when he pretends that he just saved himself and Clara and let everyone else suffocate. And the laugh, the 12th Doctor does is just utter gold, which leads to one of my favourite 12th Doctor moments when he's talking about choices. This episode is what made me go, you know what, 12 is going to be one of my favourite Doctors. And the one thing I will say, Capaldi has never given a dud performance. Capaldi gives it his all, he throws himself within the story, and this can be said the same with this story. The story itself has some real nice little nods to classic Who with the jelly babies, and the story being quite similar to the Robots of Death with the whole sort of murder mystery on a luxury vehicle. The Foretold is utterly unnerving with the whole 66 seconds to live. The design is just downright creepy. And this story just ticks all the boxes for me. It's just utter perfection. I just love this story to bits. It has just got the nice sort of sense of claustrophobicness to it. It's just wonderful. I just think it is the perfect 12th Doctor story for me. And yeah, I absolutely love Mommy on the Orient Express. The more I watch it, the more I go, you know what? This could be one of my favourite episodes of all time. I just absolutely adore it. So that concludes my top 10 12th Doctor episodes. Please do comment down below your 10 favourite 12th Doctor stories. It'd be interesting to hear what you make of this list and to hear your thoughts on your top 10 12th Doctor stories. So that's all I have to say for this video. Hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next video, whatever that will be. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. So thank you very much, and bye bye.